Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rocket Live. I am your host, Chris Vaglio from Rocket Growth Agency, and I've got an amazing guest on today. My friend, my brother, Mark Strigl.
Hey, Chris.
What's up, man? How are you?
Well, I'm good. I mean, right before we went live here, we were hit with the devastating news about Eddie Van Halen. So a little shell-shocked over that, but besides that, I'm doing okay. How about you?
Yeah, same boat, man. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, it's only been a few minutes now. The news just hit me. My phone's been blowing up, and everybody who knows me knows that I am a gigantic Van Halen fan and Eddie Van Halen, and the reason why I even started being involved in music and playing guitar in the first place was because of Eddie. So yeah, this news has really definitely punched me right in the face, and I guess it's just apropos for 2020 at this point, because this year officially sucks. I'm just gonna say
it definitely does. And I mean, what an amazing talent. I mean, in my opinion, one of the most not just influential and groundbreaking musicians, but I would even say one of the most influential and groundbreaking artists of our time, of the past hundreds of years, possibly. I mean, he took guitar playing to a new place, forever changed it. I really think there are only a handful of other players, lots of great guitar players, but I mean, Jimi Hendrix, whether you like him or not, he moved the guitar to a new place, and Eddie Van Halen did that too. There's not many others you can put in that category. I mean, possibly one of the most innovative guitar players ever to live. Period.
Yeah, I mean well said, man. I mean, he just huge influence on me growing up. I mean, listening to Van Halen records, and just the impact it made on me personally. He made on me, the whole band, and I'm struggling to find all the right words to say, because he was definitely just a ginormous inspiration to me, and kind of everything that I'm about, and even why I even do this show, and the inspiration between Rocket Growth and the attitude and all that is comes out of being such a fan of rock music, rock and roll, and just that attitude, that swagger, the confidence, and talk about somebody who was originator and just transformed the way the instrument is played, and just creating an entire genre around it. And it's funny, even my opening music that everybody listens to is like before they come on, like it's not a Van Halen song, but like really when I was looking for like music to like royalty free music, I used the search term Van Halen. And I had a guest on a couple weeks ago, Rev, and he was like, "What is that? Some like lost Van Halen track or something?" And I'm like, "No, it's just, but it's got that quality." So even just listening to that now was definitely like, oh man, it's heavy, but definitely another curveball in the year of 2020 for sure.
Yes, yeah.
I wanted to have Mark on the show because prior to the Eddie Van Halen stuff happening. Mark is a really interesting dude. He's a video producer. He's a content creator, but even more so, we connected, let alone all the metal and all the hard rock and all the parallels there, and fans of a lot of the same music. But Mark is an original podcaster, man. Like you were podcasting when podcasting kind of wasn't cool, when everybody didn't have a podcast. I mean, you were definitely an OG originator of the podcast, and you did it, man. You built up a huge following. You even took it to TV and all that. And I'd love to hear more of your story and get your background, because I'm sure it'd be a big influence for people to hear that and kind of hear how you came up. Because I mean, you're besides being a video creator, you're a musician yourself. So you've got a lot going on. I mean, you're definitely, not only are you a rock star, but you've had a lot of access to rock stars as well. So I'm sure everybody would be thrilled to hear your story.
Well, thanks, Chris, and thanks for having me on the show, and congratulations to you on the launch of the new company. I think it sounds very exciting, and I can't wait to see what you have in store for us all. But man, so as far as the podcasting goes, I had been working in the TV industry for quite a while. I spent the majority of the 90s at VH1 and MTV, and really had what was kind of a dream job in my 20s in that era, and just got to produce and work on so many great shows and go to some really cool parties, meet some really cool people like, David Bowie and, Peter Gabriel. And I mean, the list goes on and on. And so I was always kind of looking for an outlet. I always liked the idea, I was a musician, as you mentioned, and released my own music independently, and liked the idea of, being on stage or in front of the camera, or so. At some point, I got one of the producers on a show I was working on. This is probably in like 2004 or 3, maybe. It was called 100 Most Metal Moments. It was a 5-hour show on VH1, and they had suggested that there were a lot of holes in the script. I was a writer and producer on the show and consultant, and they asked me if I'd be willing to go in front of the camera. And honestly, after that, there was chatter like, well, who is this guy that is on the camera? What's his credentials and stuff? And I just heard about this new thing called podcasting. This is 2005-ish.
Right.
Yeah, 2005. So I thought, well, I can't get on the radio. I tried to get shows on Sirius and the radio and stuff. Could never do that. Couldn't get my own TV show, which I tried to do. So I figured, why not start a podcast? And at this point, this was like 2005, so 15 years ago, no one knew what podcasts were. They weren't easy to get. Like now you just pay somebody, $40 a month, and they give you a RSS feed, and suddenly you're on all the podcasting apps. It's not how it worked back then. We had to write the code from scratch, and I got my friend John Ostrowski, aka Astronomy, involved because he knew how to do stuff like that. So he actually technically wrote the code. And because we were on this new platform of podcasting, we started getting guests pretty easily. We had Striper and Engve and people like that, and it just started to build. And within a year and a half, we had Ozzy on the podcast. So it moved pretty quick. And I could go on and on about podcasting, but it was always, for many years, it was my hope that it would turn into a lucrative thing. I don't really believe it is easy to make money at podcasting. And what podcasting did for me is, we got a TV deal for a while with Fuse. It's given me, which paid fairly well for the 4 months we worked for them. And it had, has allowed me to get credentials, and Heavy Montreal flies me up every summer, and I get backstage passes and free food and get treated like a rock star. And I get to, I go to see Billy Idol play at PNC here in New Jersey. They send a golf cart for me and my wife, and rush us backstage to interview Steve Stevens. So all that stuff is highly exciting and fun, and I could give you a million examples of that type of stuff. However, at the end of the day, I don't make more than a couple $100 a month podcasting. It's truly if that, by the time I add in all the expenses. So it's truly always been a labor of love, and also a frustration, because I do feel that when Steve Jobs decided podcasts were going to be available for free, and he refused to let people charge for them, it set a precedent that podcasting is something that no one is going to ever want to pay for. And I think that exists to this day. Have people figured out ways to make money at podcasting? Yes, but I will tell anyone out there that it is extremely, extremely difficult to make money at podcasting. And I don't mean to discourage anybody, but on the flip side, if you want to make money at podcasting, you better be willing to invest a lot of money into it. Something that I've never done. I've never taken $100,000 loan out to, finance my podcasting and hire a talent booker,
Right.
People are like, well, Mark Maron and, and Adam Carolla and stuff. Yeah. But they have a whole corporate machine behind them. They have big guests, when Barack Obama is your guest. Yeah. And you have, 1 million downloads on that episode. You're going to figure out a way to make some money and people are going to come to you. I have a modest listening audience, and we get consistently between 2,000 and 3,000 downloads an episode. Our biggest episode of the last few years, we had Mick Mars on right when The Dirt was coming out. That episode got 15,000 downloads. So if you want to make money at podcasting, I've studied all this, I know all this, you need, and you're an independent guy, you need to really be getting about 30,000 downloads. You want to make good money. We're talking, between 50 and 100 per episode. And that's very difficult. It's a very difficult thing to do. Do people do it? Yeah, but it's very difficult. And when you have again, corporate money behind you and advertising and the way corporations work is if they have a big, a bunch of shows, they're able to monetize stuff in different ways that independent people like you and I might not be able to. So, yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, and listen, I mean, that's with anything, right? I mean, it's difficult in any respect. I mean, if you're doing anything in creative or art or, as a musician or anything like that, if you're in a band, you're getting, you have to put in a lot of work. There's no guarantee just because you write a record and put a bunch of music up on Spotify doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be an overnight success. I mean, you really have to gig. You got to get out there. You have to, and that's not even a full on, guarantee. I mean, the biggest thing that I've seen from podcasting, from my point of view, is I see it more as a really strong, like, personal branding tool.
Yes,
to really
absolutely.
help to further your personal brand. I mean, if you've got an audience of 100, 200 people, like your clients, your friends, your family, all that, I feel like it's just a really useful tool in that way, because then you're sharing information about a specific, whatever it is, if it's a service, if it's something you're extremely knowledgeable about, something you're a fan, hobby, whatever it is, but you're sharing it to like this audience, and you don't have this illusion of like, I'm going to make a ton of money off of having a podcast. This is more of a way to put myself out there and engage the people, my audience. Then I feel like you're setting yourself up for a better, I guess, return on investment or success in that sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know comedians, for example, and it works great for them because they don't necessarily make any money at the podcast, but it helps them when they do go and do their live performances, not happening at this time, obviously, in history, but when they go out and play the comedy clubs, it's suddenly like, oh, okay, well, it's the guy, he has a podcast, and, it helps with that branding. And I think that it is important to be on as many different platforms as you can handle, and to get your quote unquote name or brand, whatever you want to call it, out there in as many different ways as possible. And that's one of the reasons, I've still to this day continued doing Talking Metal, because I do feel like, okay, I got a foot in the door, so it's like, here we are 15 years later, and, and it has led to some other opportunities. I recently, all summer long, worked on a series for NBC Universal's Sci-Fi Channel, and I was the producer and writer on that. They let me pretty much do whatever the hell I wanted, and the only thing they told me was, okay, it's metal music and how it overlaps with horror, sci-fi, and fantasy in the Comic-Con world. That was all they said, and they were like, here's a bunch of money, go. I got paid super well all summer, and one of the reasons that they brought me in to do that was because Talking Metal. They knew, oh, this is the guy. You know, he goes to all the shows, he does the podcast, he's had some history in heavy metal TV, and I worked at Sci-Fi as a staff producer for many years too. Right. So I was the guy to do that, you know, and that's all branding, you know, on a different level. It's not branding to the public, but it's branding with your peers in the industry and connections and people seeing what you're doing. And so much of what we do on social media, let's face it, is the I don't know what the word is, the perspective, is that the word that you give off about yourself and what you're up to. And I always, you know, I cut down people because I'm like, okay, well, this guy claims to be, you know, the biggest podcast journalist guy, but really he, you know, his day job is, you know, he works retail, or he, you know, is a school teacher, or he puts together cars. I know people in quote unquote big bands, and, you know, oh, she's an airline attendant. Oh yeah, she's a dental hygienist, you know, when she's not out there playing festivals with her band and all this stuff. And that's fine, you know? So I personally think that it's okay to show who you really are too. Other people don't. There's I mean, I know another guy in a band, he's you know, sells computers at the Apple store, but online he's all about his persona in the band and never once mentions that he's, you know, works for Apple. And you know, so, you know, it is what it is, but it's all, it's all how people perceive you online. Right. And that led to me getting a good job this summer, you know, but it was a freelance job for the rest of the summer. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it's coming back for more episodes. We're hoping for that.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the show and it's really cool. I really enjoyed it, and you know, and I there's been, I think, kind of a little bit of I mean, there's a lot of shows out there, but it's nice to just see that blend of, like, you know, metal, when specifically metal, hard rock, heavy music, and, you know, being a giant nerd myself, as you can see behind me, you know, I did having the sci-fi horror crossover Comic-Con kind of culture, like that. I actually really enjoyed that aspect. So it was like, wow, this is really blending everything that I'm really into into one kind of a show. So I really enjoyed it, which I think is also great, because it's like, you know, don't think about, and I tell people this all the time, and I'm, you know this too, like, don't worry so much about creating content that everybody's gonna like just create content that you, not only that you enjoy making, but like, what is your audience gonna like? Why are you trying to create content? Do you want to create content to build up more business for your business? Well, then great. Well, then create content that's aimed at that. If you love Walking Dead, then fine, create content that if you want that appeals to Walking Dead fans, like create a Facebook group, do a podcast, you know, start a blog. Like, these are all the things that you can do, like, very easily in today's day and age, which I know, you know, you're talking, I mean, back in 2005, and I remember that, it's like, we basically, like, you know, we had MySpace, and even Friendster a little bit. And that was, and that was kind of it. I mean, YouTube wasn't even so much a thing yet. I mean, I can barely remember being on YouTube that early on. You know, and then, like you said, like, to get a podcast, so you're writing the RSS feed. Like, you know, now I'm, you know, for me, like, I go on Podbean and I just put it on, and boom, I pay my monthly membership, and I can upload it, and it goes to all the distribution platforms. So, you know, it's definitely a big difference, but the accessibility now, the technology makes it that, you know, whatever you're trying to do, if you're trying to put yourself out there, you can. Like, you really don't have an excuse at this point, other than the fact that you don't want to do a podcast, you know? Yeah. Now, you know, and so, you know, this is, so talking about your background now, like, so obviously very heavy. You've spent a lot of time in the video industry and television. And so, you know, I think anybody who's been following any kind of mainstream media about the entertainment industry kind of knows things have been very, you know, volatile in the industry. Shows have been shut down. Films have been shut down. They're pushing out all these big tentpole films now to next year. Regal Cinemas just announced that they're shutting down all their cinemas until basically further notice. You know, how have you been finding it, finding work and staying creative during this time? I mean, and on top of that, where do you think it's going to go? You know, because you're in the industry, you're active in it. So what are you hearing? What are you feeling? Like what's happening from your perspective?
Yeah, so it's, you know, I don't want to sound too doom and gloom, but the quote unquote TV industry, which again, in my opinion, is not Netflix, is not like Shudder or anything like that. Those are streaming services, and the TV industry was something different. We used to go to TV stations to and know that, okay, well, that station's going to give us HBO. And I mean, HBO still, because they were early adapters to the streaming stuff, they're surviving. But, you know, I probably shouldn't mention any names because I don't want to get in trouble. But, you know, even MTV, for example, you went to MTV because you knew what kind of content you were going to get on MTV. And it was more about the MTV family of shows, less about the individual shows. Whereas now the networks, they just have no value. You know, the networks made a big portion of their money by Time Warner would pay, you know, Viacom or NBC Universal to have their stations on their cable platform, the wire running into your house. But all that's worthless now, for the most part, or close to worthless, because things are streaming, and no, you don't really need that wire to bring your stations in anymore. You just need the Wi-Fi, you know.
Yeah,
so
you need
it's
internet connection.
Yeah, internet connection. Yeah. So I think the TV industry, where there were, you know, shows being made in-house at MTV or at you know, at Sci-Fi and stuff, and those days are gone. And the industry has truly moved on. You know, you're not seeing, even like I did a lot of promo and commercial work. Like, so when Ghost Hunters on Sci-Fi would, you know, we'd have episodic promos, you know, there'd be 12 episodes in a season. And each week we'd have to create like 2 or 3 commercials to advertise next week's show. They just don't do that anymore. And those commercials would air throughout the on air. I mean, they do it, but on such a smaller level, because people just don't watch TV. TV is dead, and it's all about the streaming services. So we've had to adapt as producers and writers who come from the TV world. And I'll be honest, that hasn't been that easy for me. Before the whole COVID thing, work seemed to be getting less and less. I did a lot of work at Englewood Cliffs, NBC Universal facility. They laid off hundreds, if not thousands of people. I mean, we're hearing Disney's laying off people. I don't know if that is more theme parks or production people, but it's just, it's been a tough way to adapt. But, you know, I think I finally, after many years, understand that, okay, it's a different world now. And, you know, if I want to still have my foot in the video production world, it's content creation, you know, and it's figuring out how to sell my content to people. So, you know, I, again, very fortunate this summer to have worked on this Metal Crush show on Sci-Fi with some great people. And, you know, now instead of reaching out to all the old TV stations I used to do work for, you know, IFC and WeTV, where there's just literally a skeleton crew working now, you know, I'm reaching out to more of the internet platforms, because I really, obviously that's where the future is, you know. And and there's a great book out there called They Move the Cheese, and it's about these mice, and you know, they move for years. They're sitting around eating the cheese in this one location, and one day they move the cheese. Some of the mice move, other of the mice hang back, thinking we're going to wait here because we know the cheese is coming back, and it never comes back. And that's just life, man. I mean, life is always shifting and moving, And that's why you get, people saying, oh, it's not like it used to be, and the glory days. And, for some people, the glory days are right now, maybe not during COVID, but it's just so I think as we get older, I mean, I'm 50 years old now. So it's like, as we get older, you really have to force yourself to not get into the crotchety old man frame of mind where things used to be better and remember how good music used to be, and and just have an open-minded attitude and experience new things and do new things and don't be afraid to try some new settings on your iPhone, and just like stuff like that, because in some ways creating content is now easier than ever. And I mean, it blows me away. Like, I'll get on my cell phone and film a video of myself talking for 3 minutes, and it'll get 10,000 views sometimes on YouTube. Other times I spend 3 weeks editing a piece of some rock star or something that I interviewed, really doing it, and it gets like 92 views or less, 52 views, and it's I think people also have accepted, that stuff doesn't have to be the quality that it used to be, so I don't know. I'm kind of just riffing and thinking out loud here, but it's a brave new world. I don't even know what your question was.
But it's you know what, you really did, you kind of answered it. I mean, I agree with a lot of things you're saying, because this is stuff that I talk about all the time. I mean, the real core of it is like, listen, you have to embrace change. Like, change is going to happen. Life is never going to stop. So you can either like embrace it and go for it, try new things, step out of your comfort zone, and maintain a positive mental attitude, open-mindedness about it. Or like you said, it's like, who moved the cheese? Like, you can hang back and wait forever for the cheese to come back, but guess what? It ain't coming back. Like, and you're going to be stuck with a choice right then and there. Am I going to move forward? Or am I just going to stay here forever and just be static and stagnant and be left behind and become irrelevant? And I think what you're saying is ringing true. I mean, it's the industry. It functioned a long time one way, and now it's not a viable business model. Same thing with the music industry, which you know of as well. I mean, I spent 20 years in video production myself, and a lot of that stuff still carries on, and there's still always corporate commercial work that's always gonna happen. That's always gonna be a thing. But definitely the YouTube side of things, when you go on YouTube and you're on LinkedIn and you see the content that's created, like what we're doing now is like how this is even happening is pretty much the norm of what you could do. Get a podcast. I mean, you could pretty much have a pretty cool setup for under $800. Computer, camera, mic, and I got one light going here. I mean, and you can pretty much be up and running and producing content of whatever you want, business, hobby, culture. I mean, it's whatever you want to do, and you can find an audience for that if you're producing it and then engaging that audience.
Yeah. And listen, I don't have the answers. I'm just like everyone else trying to figure it out. But I do think backing and corporate money or loans can always listen. I'm used to, when I was in a band, think, oh man, do it yourself and we'll one day get there, but we never did. And we were pretty good, but it's just like, I do think there is this myth out there that, like, oh, he's just a gamer in his apartment in London. And that's why he, and he just is passionate about it. And that's why he has 1 million views, within his first hour when he posts his YouTube video. But when you pull back the curtain a bit, there's always something more, it's very hard without spending some money to get going, because you're always going to be in competition with people who are spending money to get going. So I do think that's something to consider, that teaming up with backers or financing, and it's very hard, especially for me. I got a family, I got bills to pay, to take risks. You got to take some risks if you want to want to go somewhere in life. So it's, keeping an open mind about where the world is and where the world is progressing, but it's also not being too scared to take that next step. And it is scary to think, all right, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to take out a loan from the bank.
Right.
I'm going to do this and do that. I'm going to start a new business. I'm going to, it is scary to do that, but sometimes that's what you have to do realistically.
No, absolutely. I mean, nothing is without risk, and especially when you're starting a new business or doing something like that, or even transitioning and going from one company to to another one. I mean, there's risk involved with all that. You don't just have to just be starting a business and take a risk. Like, you just may decide, hey, I've been working at the same place and I want to change something. I want to do something different, or I want to work on something different, and you make that change. There's a risk involved with that as well. So, but you gotta, what you gotta say to yourself is, is it, for me personally, is it worth the risk? Is it something that's gonna, I need to do this? Because otherwise, if I just stay in the same place, I'm literally just standing still in the same place while the world is passing me by. Right. And you got to either be okay with that, which is fine. And for some people that's fine. And that's what makes them happy. But, for everybody else, it's like, you got to kind of, embrace the fear is really what it is. Like, take it, embrace it, turn it into a positive, and take the leap.
The other thing I would say too is the hard work and the drive that you need, which again is hard when you have a family and you're trying to homeschool and all this other crap, but I always say, you take a guy like, I don't know how old your audience is, but Puff Daddy. You remember Puffy?
Yeah, of course.
And people would always, back in the 90s and stuff, kind of shit on him for, oh, he's not talented, he's riding coattails and stuff. But I always said this about the guy, that he was a mediocre talent. Seriously, maybe he actually was. But the one thing he absolutely had, maybe he wasn't Jay-Z, he wasn't that talented, but the guy worked his tail off. And I've seen this over and over again, where it's not the people with the best ideas. This is one thing I've learned as an old man. It truly is not the people with the best ideas. It is. I mean, Elon Musk, he has some great ideas, but the one thing about him that I believe has made him so successful is he never stops working, and he works way harder than everyone else around him. And there's probably people who have as good of ideas, if not better, than Elon Musk, but he is driven and works way harder than everyone else. It's not that people are smart. It really isn't, or even talented. Does that stuff help? Sure. But even more important than that, especially in the entertainment business, is the drive and the, putting in that hard work, putting in those hours, and some of the putting in the hours is making connections. Connections is everything. That's something I've screwed up on. When I had kids, I moved to the suburbs. I really was focused on my family, which, no regrets, but I do feel in retrospect, I let go of a lot of connections and didn't continue building those connections like I did when I was in my 20s and 30s, which truly propelled me in retrospect to really some cool places, because at the end of the day, it's all who and if you suck at your job, that's probably not going to help you that much. But if you're good at your job, I had a super talented TV producer, produced like Real World and all these other things. He very, very successful. He told me, he said, I said, what's your key to success? He said, I show up every day. That was it. And I thought that was just brilliant, because so many people don't, they give up. They think they're I'm bigger and better than this. They get in a fight with their boss over some stupid thing. They decide they don't like their coworkers,
right.
But to show up every day, man, it is hard work, and it's tough for people to do that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's showing up, being present. That's what is it? Half of life is just showing up.
Right.
But it's so true. I mean, it really is true, and you do have to put in the work. I mean, nothing. I think that people have this illusion of, hey, I'm just going to start a YouTube channel, and boom, I'm going to have this audience, and I'm going to have these thousands of views and all this stuff. And it's like, no, it takes a lot of hard work, and it also takes a lot of, trial error. Go back and watch any of these YouTubers, and you probably can't even find it because they probably took them off, but
right.
Go back and watch some of their early stuff. I mean, even, and I don't know, are you a fan of Gary Vaynerchuk at all? Or you watch Gary V stuff at all? Or
I don't. Yeah. I don't. Yeah.
But you know what? I mean, with him, no, I mean, he's, go back and watch, like Gary V was like using YouTube when, nobody was really kind of even thinking about it. And he was making, his videos were not that great on the original wine videos. And you can go watch them and you can see that he was just, but he did it. He did it. He put the work in. He eventually got better to the point of, where he's taking it now. But I mean, that's the thing. It's not like you don't get an audience overnight, man. I mean, you started a podcast in 2005 and, your audience didn't just happen, the minute you threw episode 1 up. Like there was a lot of hard work out there,
Right. And, it was easier back then, though. Honestly, I think it was. I mean, we were
wasn't as competitive.
Yeah,
right?
we were one of like 400 podcasts on iTunes.
You guys were pioneers of that.
Now Apple Podcasts has over 1 million podcasts. That's not episodes. That's just titles. 1 million titles. So it's definitely podcasting. I feel like it's harder to break through now, and that's one of the reasons, I've held on to Talking Metal, because I feel like, starting over would be virtually impossible. But we still have people who've been listening to us for, over a decade, some for 15 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's awesome that you guys have kept it going during this time, and and I've seen how you've translated it into YouTube, and basically how we're doing this now. You've taken it onto YouTube like this too. So on top of you just cutting videos on your phone, you've also released the full-on video versions of the interviews that you guys are releasing on the audio podcast, which is cool. It's really cool to see that and watch that.
Cool. Well, thanks.
Yeah,
but Chris. So tell me about the new company, because I'd love to just learn what it's all about and what you're trying to do with it.
Yeah, well, thanks for turning it around. So really, Rocket Growth Agency is all about helping people, helping owners, founders, independent professionals, CEOs, to help them to really establish a personal brand, to help them develop and grow a personal brand, which then will help them to really increase and expand their network, which then ultimately turning into more business opportunities, more business development from them. So if somebody's out there and they're saying, oh my God, my network is totally shrunk, I'm not getting the leads I used to get, or it's quiet, and they're just having a difficult time maybe networking, especially during this time with the transition of being virtual and all that. And then obviously the business opportunities have for some folks have become few and far between. You could look back and say, okay, well, there's certain steps we could do to help you with your network and all that. But then you can take it a step further and go, well, what are you doing on your own personal branding side? How are you really putting yourself out there? Are you staying top of mind? How are you engaging your current audience of people? How are you engaging your network? Once again, we're not talking about thousands of people or millions of people. I'm talking about like your closest connections, your clients, the people in your orbit, your space. What are you doing to stay top of mind with them? So that's really what I'm doing, is I'm working one-on-one with folks and helping them with that. And I'm taking my 20 plus years experience of owning and running and operating a successful video production company, and using all that experience and helping to, teach people how to do what I did. Basically how, I marketed myself and helped Gray Sky to market itself. And just that attitude that me and my business partner Mark always had about, Mark, we treated Gray Sky like we were in a band. That's how we market ourselves. That's how we acted. And for me, that's a big part of the mindset when I'm working with people, is to say, hey, think about things a little bit differently. Like right now, you're not doing this. Like you're in a band. How are you getting people to your gig this weekend? How are you getting people to listen to music? How are you turning people into raving fans and having them buy your merch? Let's think about it from that point of view, and then you start to begin to unlock some of that that creativity that they didn't think they had, but it was always inside them. It's just that you're trying to remove a lot of roadblocks. So typically that's what I'm doing with folks, and that's how I'm helping them.
Yeah, I think that's a really healthy way to think about it, being in a band, which not everyone's been in a band, but I know exactly what you're saying. And
right.
And that's, if anything, if I had to point to something that I've personally failed at, because I became real family focused, and not that that's a bad thing, but and maybe even too focused on talking metal, to be honest, in some ways, that it's networking, and in the same way when we were in bands, we handed out flyers on the street. It's
right.
taking that to the contemporary phases and making that phone call. I mean, I still think connecting with someone on the phone is in some ways a lost art. I had a phone call earlier today, and just to talk to people instead of sending the blind email or the text, I think is really important. And if anything good that's come out of this COVID thing, I think that the connection like this, the video connection, is really something that has progressed and will continue to be used even after we come out of all this. And I think that's important, to be able to look at each other. I think that's
absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's just still that human connection. There's a lot of body language you can still read, and it's hard to oftentimes you get an email or a text, and it's so easy to just assume what the tone is, even though that's but like you get inside your head of like, oh, well, how do I take this? How am I supposed to read into this? And then you get on the phone with somebody and you realize, God, it's not even, it's just the way they wrote it. And so when you're doing this, or you're on a phone with somebody, it's much easier to at least establish a better connection. I mean, I do this a lot with folks, and I set up virtual coffees all the time with people. I put it on LinkedIn and other social media, and I go, hey, here's a link to my calendar. Book a 15-minute virtual coffee with me. Let's catch up. Let's get to know each other. And I do that a lot, and I've been doing that really since the start of the COVID. The pandemic, when we all started like really just working from home. I used it as a way to really keep connected with people, and also too is just very therapeutic for people to just talk. We did a lot of times I didn't even talk business with people. We just talked like, hey, talked about what was going on in our lives. Hey, are you okay? Are you okay? It's just a human check-in. Sometimes goes even a lot further than getting right down to business or something like that. Like, hey, let's hey, how are things going? What's going on with you? Is the family okay? Are you okay? Like, oh, what have you been doing? What are you reading? What are you interested in now? Just why don't we talk a little bit about that before we dive right into like hardcore business stuff?
Yep. And then I think that all goes back to what you're talking about with your company, is just like networking, and people remember when it's not always all about business, and I think that strikes people, and that makes people like you, that makes people think of you when there is a business opportunity. What, he was a nice guy. I enjoy talking to him, and obviously you have to be real about it, because
I always say you have to be authentic. You got to be yourself, be authentic every time, all the time. Don't look at it as an acting gig. Don't try to be a character or a persona in that sense. Like, if it just always comes down to, people do business with people they like. So if they like you and they appreciate you and they engage with you and find there's a connection somewhere, then you're 100% going to be more apt to like want to do business with that person, or keep them more top of mind, or send them a referral or whatever. If you're constantly, engaging with them, like if you are, like, okay, so Mark, just say for instance, like if you we're doing something else for a living, not, even TV producer or whatever, but the fact that you are a TV producer, screw it. So you're a TV producer, but you do talking metal. So they are, they are two different things, but you've been able to blend them. But that's interesting because, I listen to Talking Metal, I watch the videos, but like now you're just much more top of mind with me. Should an opportunity come up as far as, a producer or writing gig or editing, something involved in the production world, even though you're talking to, XYZ band on your podcast and on YouTube, but like, it's just that correlation because you're engaging, with somebody like me, and that's for anybody in your audience. Like, just because that person's listening, you have no idea who else they're connected to or what they're into or blah, 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 blah. So you got to keep that in mind and sort of like not like, even if you want to be laser focused about targeting in on your audience, you absolutely can, but don't be so closed-minded to think that like, this person may be connected to a bunch of people that could be all your next clients somewhere. So, that's what I like to talk to everybody about. And that's where, positive mental attitude comes in and, have that great attitude, be open-minded, but always be yourself and be totally authentic, because if you're not, it's going to blow up in your face. Like people can sniff out BS a mile away when
absolutely.
You're trying to be something you're not. Like,
right on. Yep.
Yeah. So cool, man. We're getting close to wrapping it up here.
Sure.
So I do appreciate all your time, but I'd love to just talk a little bit, like very quick, man, like just rapid fire stuff. Like, so you've been doing Talking Metal for a while, man. So let's talk a little rock star stuff.
Yeah. I'll keep the answers brief.
Yeah. Who was your favorite interview, or do you have a list of favorite? Like who did you really enjoy talking to most out of the years that you've been doing the podcast?
Well, we interviewed Ozzy twice, and I would say the first time when he was like in a super friendly, good mood was awesome. That was definitely a highlight for me for sure. There's been so many though through the years. I mean, Jeff Tate of Queensryche, Rob Halford, driving in a car with Nikki Sixx as he was going to a book signing in Manhattan and interviewing him in the car was amazing. And then getting stuck in traffic, and basically the interview was over and we were just hanging out with Nikki Sixx in the back of an SUV for like, an hour, literally. It was crazy. I mean, the interview was probably like 30 minutes and then it was just us like hanging with him. So many good memories for sure. Ian Gillan, I remember talking with him on the phone early on thinking, wow, this is insane. One of my favorite singers. But there's been, so many. And I think it's always funny that the most famous people are always the easiest to talk to and deal with. I've always felt that way.
Yeah, that's something I've seen as well. Like we had, while Gray Sky Mark and I, we were involved in the music for a time, and we used to do a lot of work with Sony BMG, and we had a really great opportunity of meeting like guys like Tony Bennett and Sting and Chris Bodie. And I got to tell you, like, talk about guys that were just class acts and gentlemen. Like Tony Bennett was by far probably one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. Like, and talk about someone who's like a mega star. I mean, really, you don't think about it, but you think about a guy who's had what a career he's had, and he just, I mean, we were at his home and like he just welcomed us with like open arms. It was just, he was so awesome. And Sting was a super class act too. So I agree. I think sometimes the bigger they are, definitely they have that, I don't know, that thing about them that makes them just, very very cool people to be around.
Absolutely.
Cool. So real quick, so what I don't think I can't end this without finding out, like, real quick, like, what are you listening to right now? Like what's jamming on your headphones?
Well, my favorite band in like the past probably 10 years is Ghost, which I know some people don't get them. I love them and become quite obsessed with everything they do. So Ghost is always playing on my headphones. I'm trying to think of what else, if anything, I've heard. Unfortunately my phone is upstairs.
That's right.
My dog making a guest appearance.
Hey.
Yeah, she 5 o'clock is when she gets fed. So I suddenly am like get kisses and everything right around 5 o'clock as a reminder. But I listen. I'm trying to think. Lately, I've been in a little bit of a Maiden kick, going back to really explore many of their, earlier records, the first four specifically, where the songs were a bit shorter. And, I feel like the punch was a bit harder on those first four Maiden records.
Definitely. A little more urgent, a little more punchier.
I'm just trying to think of any newer bands. There was one which I found kind of interesting. You know what I've been listening to a lot, which is a 2 Minutes to Late Night. Have you heard of this guy?
Oh yeah, I've been listening to it a lot.
I think he's got some great jams. I just actually became a supporter of his on Patreon.
Yeah, I mean they've been doing and that's a great YouTube channel to follow if you guys are looking for something really fun and wild and just awesome music, a collection of amazing musicians. Check out that 2 Minutes to Late Night YouTube channel. Arsenio Hall is the host, and he basically gets together musicians from different metal bands, and they're all playing virtually, and they do I guess not always a rearrangement, but they kind of take covers, and they will do somewhat faithful, but like little heavier versions of different songs and cover songs. And it's been great. And they've been doing it as a way to help support musicians. And he's got a Patreon account. So yeah, that's a great recommendation, man.
I'll give you a couple more. A Crippled Black Phoenix is a band that is very trippy, kind of almost Floyd-esque, but they kind of have like what was that, Black Rebel Motorcycle vibe at times. They're really interesting. Again, Crippled Black Phoenix. They're younger guys, really, really great stuff. And two old timers, the new Public Enemy record, I'm just loving. It's quite political. I've heard that too. So depending on your political stance, you may or may not like what they're talking about, but it's called What You Gonna Do When the Grid Goes Down. And I like the new Marilyn Manson record too. We Are Chaos, produced by Shooter Jennings. So those are some albums that I've been spinning a lot lately.
Cool. That's awesome, man. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. So before we wrap up, where can people connect with you, man? Like, so obviously the podcast, all that. So tell everybody where they can connect with Mark Strigl.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. The place I'm really have decided I'm going to work harder, and I'm learning what tweets get more response than others, which is a whole nother subject, but is Twitter. So it's at TalkingMetal, and it's not just about the podcast. You get my personality. You might occasionally get a picture of my kids, but you'll get plenty of talk about music, all forms of music, all sorts of talk on my Twitter page, and I would love to engage with you there at TalkingMetal.
Awesome, man. That's wonderful. So I just want to say thanks again for coming on. Obviously we started off the show with the news about Eddie Van Halen passing away, which hits both of us really hard. And we were talking a little bit about that. So I'm definitely going to be jamming to some Van Halen for probably the rest of this year.
Yeah,
I never really ever stopped jamming to Van Halen, but now it's gonna. Now I'm really.
For me, I'm so into those first records. I like the first like 8 records quite a bit, especially the first 6 with Roth. But what I started thinking about was, man, I really want to. Hearing that he passed, one of my first thoughts was, I really want to go get into the stuff that he's done that I'm not like as familiar with. I know it, but even like the Gary Sharon record, I want to go listen to everything this man ever did, because I believe there is brilliant parts of music that he did throughout his career, not just that early stuff. And that's something I'm going to do, listen to the stuff he put out later in his career. And, sadly, there hasn't been much output from him in the last, decade or so. I mean, we got the one Van Halen record was probably,
which I love, by the way.
Which is probably already a decade ago at this point.
I mean, Tattoo was not, but the rest of that record is just slamming classic Van Halen in my opinion. So I love that Different Kind of Truth record.
Absolutely. So yeah, sad news on Eddie Van Halen, one of the greats.
Yeah, 100% one of the greats. So don't want to end on a downer like that, but I mean, it was an awesome interview. So definitely, Mark, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. And make sure everybody out there connects with Mark. Oh God, 100%, man. This was a great discussion, and I was really happy we could do it. Make sure you guys go and check out Talking Rock, Talking Metal. Also, too, like as I was saying before during the break, go to Sci-Fi Wire too and check out Metal Crush, because it was really cool, and
thanks,
I love the episodes. You got a lot of cool guests on there, so definitely check that out, man. That's going to be good. So thanks you everybody for watching, hanging in there, commenting today, watching the stream. This will be replayed. I'll be editing it, putting it up on YouTube. There'll also be an audio version on the podcast. I want to thank everybody who constantly supports Rocket Growth Agency, the podcast, everybody who's subscribed to the channels and continues to share the content. Really appreciate it. Can't do any of this without all of you guys. So 1000% thank you guys so much. So make sure you like, share, follow, subscribe, do all the things. Follow Mark, like, share, subscribe, all his things. And everybody have an amazing night. And just remember, always be authentic, be yourself, and always remember to rock it.